Hey friends, Jeff here with a new episode of Conversations Life Science Leaders Aren't Having. Today we get to flip the script. I'm going to sit on the other side of the conversation. You see, last year I was invited by my friends James Fowle and Adam Walker from the Huxley Morton podcast to be a guest on their show. Their podcast invites leaders from across the life science industry to share their story and what they're up to in the world. And I got to share my story and why I'm passionate about this work and how we do what we do and what we do. So I hope you enjoy. It was fun to relive this conversation with the Huxley Morton guys, and I'm excited to share it with you today.
Welcome back to another episode of the Huxley Morton podcast, the show where each week we speak to pharma company owners and industry leaders sharing their stories of personal and professional growth. As always, I'm on with my co-host Adam Walker, and this week we are joined by Jeff Harmon, CEO at Brilliance Within. Jeff, Adam, welcome to the show.
Thanks. That's really wonderful to be with you guys.
Jeff, you almost forgot that you were on a podcast then, didn't you? You were nodding away, and I was thinking, I know we do go out on YouTube, but it's also audio.
Cool. Super excited to be here.
Fantastic stuff. Well, look, Jeff, I've given you a very short intro there and mentioned the company name, but look, if you could give us kind of a bit of an overview of Brilliance Within and what role you play in the life sciences space.
Yeah. So I've been doing this. I'm in my 11th year, so really blessed. And I'm sure we'll talk a little bit about my journey. Mm-hmm. But over the course of the last 11 years, really have fallen in love with working with life science companies. And our mission is to help those companies create high-performing organizations so that they can meet the expectations of them for exponential growth. Mm-hmm. So all the companies we work with have high demands by lots of stakeholders to grow exponentially over the next 3 to 5 years. Mm-hmm. And so we help them do that. And our accelerator, what we believe in, is that culture and leadership is the accelerator for that type of exponential growth. Mm-hmm. And we help these CEOs and their teams get really clear on and intentional about the culture and how they lead. So mm-hmm. that's what we do. We have a small team, and we really love working with people who are also passionate about what they do.
Cool. So there's quite a big focus. And I know when you and I have spoken previously on high performance, which I know those words probably pique the interest of Adam, because his other podcast, aside from this one, of course, is the High Performance podcast that we have here in the UK. And it is all about high performance, isn't it, Adam?
Absolutely. I mean, I think it was one of my earliest favorite podcasts for exactly the reasons that probably you're touching on, Jeff, with regards to, getting the best both from individuals, but also from a collective group of individuals across a high performing team, whether that be in one location or across many. And in many of the organizations that I currently support, that is the secret sauce, isn't it? It's how to get the best from people in disparate locations, particularly, on the back of a pandemic where many people are not traveling and not physically in the same offices anymore. Yeah, it's getting the best from them, isn't it? And that's what I'd love to hear more about from your background as well, and how you make that happen, because I think I understand the principles, but I'd love to hear what makes it for you guys.
Yeah, and I guess, look, to kick us off there, Jeff, before you get too much into the day-to-day job, look, give us a bit of a kind of a biography, a rewind as to how you got into the industry first and foremost, and your background that led you to this point. And because I'm sure that once we start talking high performance, Adam and I won't get off the subject. We'll run out of time.
Yeah. So I was born in 1974 in Buffalo. Oh no, I won't do that.
That's a great year, by the way. I love 74. My favorite year too.
So my first act in professional life was I was in project management, all in IT, in financial services organizations. And I call it my quarter life crisis around 2006. And I was hungry for more and wanted to make people the focus of my next act of my professional life. And I wasn't exactly sure how that would happen, but long story short, I landed in coaching and convinced my company to pay for all my training, convincing them that it was going to make me a better leader. And they did. And I did that in parallel, and started what I would call a very hobby-like business. Had a lot of responsibility, but my business was very hobby-like. Fortunately, in 2011, it didn't feel like it fortunate at the moment, but I got laid off. There was a restructure, and I had formed the business, this hobby-like business, and I said, okay, I'm going to use my severance and the bonus that came along with that severance and fund the first couple of years of my business. And there we go. That was in 2011. And truth be told, early on, it was not industry specific. If you could breathe and speak, I would coach you. And even then it was a struggle. Being an entrepreneur is not easy, and not having entrepreneurial training or sales background, it was challenging. But
what was the most difficult bit in those early days, Jeff? Because I've often, I wasn't prepared for it when I started out. I had been the top performer at my sort of former company and thought I'd just breeze through it and it'd be, nothing to it. Yeah. I then realized I needed to wear about 10 more hats than what I thought. And it was very different. So talk us about your experience of those early days.
Yeah. So I mentioned I had no sales experience. And as an entrepreneur, you had to sell. You had to enroll people in what you're doing. So that's a huge black box. That was a huge black box. And I would say under the surface of it all is just a lot of fear. Like, would this work? Would I be able to do it? And I'm really grateful. I had some really strong mentors that surrounded me and supported me in that area. But I would say those are the two big, let's call it the two big rocks in those early years, that really unexpectedly were challenging. Who
were the mentors you looked up to out of interest? Was there anyone sort of in particular? Were they kind of famous mentors, or were they people close to home?
I would say the one mentor no one would know. His name is Dominic, and he is about 20 years older than me. And just through mutual connections, we got connected. And he walked with me then, and he walks with me still today through this journey, and was just massively helpful. And also along the way, I believe as a coach of others, that is incumbent upon me to have a coach. So I have paid for coaching from the very beginning. There's been short gaps where I haven't had a coach, but so between Dom and another gentleman named Rich and the coaches that I hired, this community of support really is what allowed me to be successful.
Nice. And so at what point, so you mentioned that in the early days, it was kind of, if you had 2 eyes, a nose, and you could breathe, you would take someone on as a client. First of all, I'm going to ask like kind of where the life science focus then come from. But look, how did that go with kind of coaching anyone? Because you surely had to be very diverse with that. That's, I'm all for focus. So talk us through, how that went, and then where the move into the life science space came about.
So I don't get into the weeds of the business. As I said early on, I'm not getting into the details of the strategy. So, I had marketing executives, dentists, entrepreneurs who had a dream of a business and nothing at that point. So what my focus always is to draw the best out of the individual. Even today, Now, my context has gotten a lot more specific over the last 3 to 5 years, but it's still my focus is to really support, whether that's individual or the team, to support them because they're the technical experts. They're not coming to me for technical expertise in their particular industry, but to be able to really support them to bring out their best and lead with clarity and lead with vision, or work if they're not a leader, to work with clarity and vision and purpose and courage. I don't talk about confidence, I talk about courage. So that belief, even early on, as I was getting to really understand, well, what does it mean to be a coach? And those ideals and those principles were getting formed. Those are some of the same principles that guide me as a coach. And even when I'm asked to be more directive as a consultant, those principles still drive me and are foundational today. The shift into life science does go back to those early days. So here in northern New Jersey, USA, a lot of life science. And my natural network in those early days was a large number of life science leaders. I went to church with the CEO of a generic pharmaceutical company. And so he was a friend and he gave me some advice, and eventually he became a client. His organization became a client. So I didn't enter into life science with some big strategic vision. Oh, I want to be in life science. Because of that sort of accidental way of approaching business at the beginning, life science clients came my way, and over the decade really became just passionate about what they do and the passion that they have often for the patients that they're serving. So I hope that answers the question. That's kind of it
does. And before I forget it, there's definitely a question that's on the tip of my tongue, and I didn't want to interrupt you at all. But speaking of life science leaders and what you mentioned about a couple of minutes ago, where you said you refer to it as courage, not confidence. Now, on this podcast, we have often interviewed some fairly high-ranking, high-level life science executives, and often kind of, I've had to pitch them, if you will, do a bit of a sales pitch on them to get them onto the show and put their mind at rest. And I certainly wouldn't class all of them as these big, extroverted, confident people. But because of what they're doing and their mission-driven values, they've certainly got that courage. So I'm just wondering if that has anything to do with why you say courage over confidence, or is there anything else?
Yeah, we could talk a lot, but I'll say it really simply about this distinction. Confidence is a result. The only requirement is courage. Okay. And I'll say it simply as that is when a client talks to me about needing confidence, I give them this distinction right away. I said, that's cool, but just understand confidence is an outcome. It's a result of being able to execute, achieve, accomplish. You'll get confidence as a result. The only requirement right now is courage and commitment, I should say, but is courage. And that's what I work with clients to cultivate courage. And so we talk a lot about fear and what's holding them back from being courageous. But don't wait for the confidence. Just cultivate courage.
What does courage mean to you, Jeff? Because you talk about it, and I think we can all take something from that. But actually, I'd love to hear what it means to you, because to me, courage means taking chances, getting out of your comfort zone, doing something that's going to challenge you. I'd love to hear what your perspective is on that.
Yeah, so it's a great question, Adam. For me, it's about seeing the fear and not eliminating the fear, but seeing the fear mostly from within, but seeing the fear and then saying, okay, I'm going to move through that anyway. And, I can think of a personal experience where I was going to go whitewater rafting, and I'm not an adventurous sort in that regard, but I was terrified. But I said, I'm going rafting. I'm going rafting. I remember in 1993 being terrified of roller coasters and being with a group of friends, and I was just going to be the guy that held all the bags because Jeff didn't go on roller coasters. But I was there, I felt the fear, and I said, that's not going to be me. I'm not going to be the guy holding the bags for the rest of the day. I mean, those are very simple life experience examples of courage, but the same applies for me. For me today, right now, I'm in the process of beginning the process of writing my next book. I have zero confidence. I'll admit, I have very little confidence in writing the style of book that I have in mind right now. So what was required of me is to generate, with the support of others, the courage to say, let's go. It feels like this is going to suck, like I'm going to suck, that I won't be able to do this, but I'm going to do it anyway. So that, to me, those are just a few examples, Adam, of what courage means to me.
And I guess just
Perfect.
Drawing on that, Jeff, I'm assuming then that is all behind the brand and the business name, right? Because the business name is Brilliance Within Coaching, and you've just kind of explained that in your overview of courage, right?
Yeah. And I know there's a writer in me. Mm-hmm. And that's why I hired a writing coach, is to draw that out. Actually, right after we're talking today, I have a meeting with my book coach, because I know while I have limited confidence, let's say that, limited confidence, I know that there's a book in me. There's the brilliance of this particular book. Mm-hmm. And I need the support, because I can't always rely on myself. Because unto myself, I may back off. I may step aside. I may say, oh, no, that's not me. But with the support of others, like this coach and a few others that I've surrounded myself with, they are going to draw out that brilliance, the brilliance of the book that's in me.
You're very understated, Jeff. You're very understated. I get that loud and clear. But at the same time, I've also heard that many people have a book in them. My wife's actually writing a book of her own experiences. And it's really interesting, because as you're describing it, you know that you have a voice and you know that you have a story, but it's putting it down into those correct words and in that order that's going to make sense to an audience or a reader when they read it, isn't it?
Yes.
That's the key point. That's where the imposter syndrome comes, because we don't all come with like capabilities we think to become authors.
Yes, absolutely.
Unless you have an English degree or something, some kind of very formal education around that, it's not something that people lend themselves to immediately, is it?
Yeah, absolutely. Well said, Adam.
And I think the other thing there is it's very clear that you practice what you preach, Jeff. The fact that you surround yourself with various other coaches to help you in different aspects of your life. So in terms of the business, look, you've kind of given us a quick overview as to how it started, how you almost fell into the life science space, which is like most of our guests in terms of how they've gotten into clinical research and life sciences themselves anyway. But look, I guess talk us through some of the challenges along the way, and then give us an overview of how things look now, kind of 2022, how things have gone. Because look, the life science space exploded as a result of COVID, and no doubt there was probably more people in need of coaching than ever during this time. So talk us through some of the challenges, but also the opportunities that present in it, and wrap it up with a quick summary of how things are looking.
Yeah. So what I'll say first is I am a patient. So I have a degenerative neurological disease that has me in a wheelchair. So I live life in a wheelchair. So while not every life science company out there in the world is working on my particular disease, there is some, but I connect over the past 8 years, I was diagnosed in 2006. but really this became real in my life over the last 8 years, is that I am passionate. And that's why I really look for that passion in the work that the companies that I serve, really look for the passion and the purpose that they have in serving their at the end of the day, the patient. So that's one of the drivers that I have in doing this work in this particular space. And so as as we look at the type of companies that I want to work with, that I do work with, is that they are values and mission driven. And that the CEO, starting there, she or he has a strong vision of what they're up to, and they have a vision for the culture that they want to create that's going to drive this what they want to do in the world, value that they want to bring. I'm not interested, to be honest, to trying to convince a leader that culture and values and leadership is important. I'm really not interested in doing that. There are consultants that have deep dive conversations with people to convince them, but I'm just not interested in that. I want to partner with somebody who has a strong vision to be values and mission and purpose driven, and then partner with them to be able to then execute on that. And sometimes it's supporting them as an individual to make this real and to make it happen, for them to be their ultimate best in leading this organization. Sometimes it's for their leadership team. And sometimes I get the privilege to work with the entire organization. But at the end of the day is I want to support every one of those people to be their ultimate best, and then bring their ultimate best to the purpose and mission that they have in front of them for their organization. So I'll stop there before we talk about.
I was just about to say, so look, with that, it sounds like it encompasses quite a broad range of how you're helping these organizations, but you're looking for those that want to do the right thing, have the courage to do the right thing, and then you're going to coach them along the way rather than trying to drag people kicking and screaming, which nobody wants to do. So you're a lot more selective about what you do now, and I'm sure that you are probably a lot more stress-free because of that. What are the biggest areas that come up that you help people with? So these life science leaders, in terms of helping them with growth, what would be kind of your biggest achievements or success stories? I mean, you don't need to mention any particular client names, but if you can kind of share some of the stories where you can talk us through a scenario, that would be useful to understand.
Yeah, so I'll give you one example. CEO was only in the job for about a year when we met, was very small, but had been acquired by private equity and was tasked with exponential growth. So 3 to 5x the business and to take the business global.
Wow.
And he had a vision for the culture, but as you guys know, talking yourselves in your businesses, but also talking with lots of executives, these leaders, he had a lot on his plate just to be able to do the operational things and hire the right people. And often in those early days, to not have those resources to be able to execute on some of the elements of the strategy, in this case, culture and leadership. And so the work that we did with him is to come alongside, my team and I came alongside him, and I call it taking his head over the table and dumping it out, and then making sense of it. And then filling in the gaps, because there's always gaps, and doing what in his organization, what he wasn't going to be able to do by his own devices or the devices or the resources that he had at that time in the business. And so we created a culture and leadership framework for the entire organization, while simultaneously supporting him with one-on-one coaching in terms of the execution and the rollout of that, supporting his senior leadership team so that they get over their stuff that they have as they came in from other organizations. And so that at the end of the day, we were all in agreement. They were all in agreement, clear lockstep agreement of what they were creating and their way forward. And we were the resource that enabled them to be able to do that. And I am so proud to say that they are on the verge of going global. They're about a $250 million company today, and just I love their mission and their passion and their commitment to their values that he had it in his brain. He had it in his heart. He just didn't have the wherewithal with his resources to be able to execute it or the expertise. And so to be able to draw out that brilliance, there's the name of our business again, and to make it solid, concrete, and actionable, and then ultimately sustainable, just a massive source of pride and success. But so that's an example of a large project with a client where all of our elements came in. We did executive coaching, we did team alignment, and then we also delivered our culture and leadership framework for them.
Wow.
It sounds absolutely awesome, Jeff. And the way you describe it, and as you're describing it, for those listening on the podcast, they won't see it, but your face literally lit up as you were describing that. You know, the value of shining a light and a mirror back to an executive team and a leadership team that want to achieve so much, but ultimately every day are possibly stuck in the weeds themselves and can't see the 30,000 foot view, which is what, by the sounds of it, you're enabling them to do. And you're, reflecting back to them exactly what they want to achieve. But also the way you describe that of, that kind of brain dump where they put all the thoughts and ideas down and then you kind of order them and play it back to them as a playbook and, through various different organizational avenues. It sounds awesome. And the way you describe it, as I say, your face absolutely lit up and told that story itself.
Thank you. Thanks for reflecting that. And I just want to emphasize the credit begins with that CEO. So we brought our gifts. There's no doubt we brought unique gifts. But without him and his vision and his commitment and then extending to his senior team, none of this would happen. None of it would happen. And so I can't say enough. And if anybody connects with me offline, we did a case study. Happy to share that about this particular client where they're named. It's not a confidential thing, but if you're interested, just contact me and I can share the case study of this particular client.
And look, I guess in doing that, Jeff, look, it's clear, and Adam's highlighted it, just kind of how that made you feel and kind of that, almost that self, I don't know how to put it, but like just the fact that you're clearly very proud of that achievement. How did you feel kind of at the time going through that? Was that kind of almost a realization of, right, this is really turned into something now from kind of 2011 when you started out to having that success story? What has, how have you changed in that period? And in terms of looking back, what was kind of going through your head at that time with all of that excitement?
Yeah. So again, I'm going to be always honest with you guys with every question, but my confidence, I was presented with this opportunity it came through the magic of LinkedIn, this connection with the CEO. He came with a need and it quickly shaped up to what it was going to be. Mm-hmm. But I think the result of this engagement revealed gifts in me and my team that I didn't even realize I had. And Adam, you mentioned before imposter syndrome. One of the elements of imposter syndrome is you think, well, everybody can do that. Anybody can do that. And I stand in line with those that say that at times. But one of the things that it's revealed about a gift that I have and my team has is this ability to listen and to translate and to turn something that unto itself is kind of just a big goulash of lots of stuff, and to turn it into this really elegant message that looks beautiful, to use the food metaphor, that looks beautiful on the plate and that people want to eat. So that was the outcome. And so I was confident that I could serve this client, and the solution quickly took shape, and knew that we could do it. But the outcome was, wow, we're really gifted in this one particular way when it comes to culture and values and leadership.
Mm-hmm. And how have you changed along the way, Jeff? Because I'm just picturing now this kind of the brain dump scenario of, look, let's take an empty glass, let's tip that out and then refill it with completely new knowledge and ways of doing things. For yourself, doing this day in, day out and working with multiple coaches, I'm guessing rather than a complete get rid and refill, it must be kind of spooning it out and putting some back in, and a gradual change over time. But talk us through how have you changed? What have you learned about yourself during this kind of quite long journey now that you've been on doing this with but both pre-life science space era and now kind of with what you're doing now?
It's a great question, James. I've always been a relationship guy. I'm old-fashioned in that sense. But I think what I've learned about myself over the last 3 to 5 years is just the power of connection. And I use a criteria. It's not on my website or publish it, but one of my sort of hidden criterias of deciding on which clients to work with is I can foresee that this person would become a friend. And I'm talking about the CEO. It doesn't always play out that way, but there's just a gut feel about a person that you get. Yeah, I could have a beer with them. I could go to a barbecue with them. That we could talk about life stuff. That there's a possibility of that this person could just be a real friend. And that speaks to this question that you've asked about. What I've learned is the power in connection. That to really sit with a person and connect and listen, ask powerful questions, and all that, both of those things are fundamentals in coaching, but it really has transcended that to just to be with people and to listen and to ask questions and to set aside agenda about what I think the answer is or what I think I might want to say here. I think that's transformed me. That's transformed my marriage. And my ability just to be with my wife. It's transformed my relationship with my daughters, 14 and 10, of this idea of just attending to the person that's in front of you, and really lean in and be present. It sounds so simple. And I think there was elements of that in my life previous, but I think over the last 3 to 5 years, I've really learned the power of that.
Definitely.
You talk about the connections. James and I have also talked about this to many of our interviewees on the podcast, and it's really interesting because you come across as such a warm and considered person yourself. It's in the nature in which you speak, but also the manner in which you use your words, and you can always hear these things. I can always hear these things, and I really do identify with that connection piece, because we've experienced it ourselves when we've spoken to different interviewees on the pod, and there is a level of connection that we are now creating with people in this medium. But also, I wonder how that translates both in person but remotely, because it's harder than ever to connect with people through a 2D media of a Teams or a Zoom call. How are you overcoming that, and how do you do that, and how have you done that in the last couple of years? And I have another question which I'll come back to. I wonder how that's overlaid with this this experience that you've had over the last few years with your own personal health journey, because there seem to be so many different components of that are all feeding into this great human being that we see in front of us.
Wow, there's a lot there, Adam.
I know. I'm sorry.
I'll
put you on the
talk
spot.
so I was given an unfair advantage. I'll say that when it came to what's happened over the last 2 years. So when I was really just a coach, before my work in the culture and leadership and the life science space really has emerged. And as a coach, I could probably count one, maybe two hands, the number of one-on-one coaching conversations I had. So all that work, starting way back when it was just a hobby, back in 2006, was all over the phone, even pre-Zoom. And there is something powerful about being present with somebody with just your voice and their voice. And so I call it an unfair advantage because I was trained to how to be fully present and connect with just the phone. Not even this, not even video like what we have on Zoom. And so I call it an unfair advantage because when COVID hit in March of 2019 and everything shut down, yeah, we had to work some things out with some clients to shift from in-person to virtual. But I thrive in this space. I thrive in this space. And I think it is a gift to be able to connect as deeply as I'm able to over Zoom or Teams or just the phone. I had a call the other day and it was so nice here in the Northeast. It was like a pre-spring day. And I said, I'm just going to do this this coaching session as CEO of a biotech startup. And I'm going to sit in our porch where it's so warm and beautiful. And I'm going to do no video, just audio. And I'll say it was one of the most, we've been working together for about a year. In the whole year we've been working together, powerful coaching, where we just were able to connect about what was real and what was relevant for him in a powerful way. So again, just I have this, as I've called it, this unfair advantage because of my training and the track of my professional development or my business's development.
Like it.
And you asked a couple more questions, but I forgot them. So if you want to recast those questions,
it was just the point around your own personal journey with regards to your health and serving the life science community, but bringing that into the overlay really.
Yeah. Empathy, bottom line, one word, empathy, is I have so much more empathy for people wherever they're at. I have a line that I say it with tongue in cheek. I say, everybody's got something, you can just see mine, because I live life in a wheelchair. And so just empathy and make people feel comfortable. Because people see folks in a wheelchair and they don't know how to act. All of a sudden they forget. And just to make the guy at Panera, that's a bakery coffee place here in the States, just to make that guy or that lady feel comfortable and at ease. And that's become part of my story, is just to put people at ease. Kids look at me and they whisper and I can hear them ask their mom, why is he in a wheelchair? And I hear them, I'm like, oh, do you want to know my story? And I'll tell them in, 20 seconds what my story is, just to put that kid at ease.
Massively agree with so much of that, Jeff, because it's, kind of that just audio event. Again, look, we've had the emergence of Clubhouse sort of recently, and it just shows how that has kicked off. But yeah, it's not always what you say, what you do, it's how you make people feel. And often, the fact that we have all been driven online, the openness to creating new connections has just expanded exponentially. I know in the early days of the podcast, it was me reaching out to loads of people, and kind of like yourself, I'd look at people's profiles and I'm like, oh, I like the look of that. You know, they're a CEO, but they also have listed on there that they coach the local under-7s soccer team or something like that. Or, you know, they've done a post and it's their wife and kids having a, you know, good Thanksgiving, and those sort of things stand out to me. And I think, could I, as you say, could I connect with that person? Could I go for a beer with that person? Et cetera, et cetera. And, you know, I since have been for a beer and met Adam's wife in person. And that's just where it all comes about. I mean, things are a little bit different now. I get a heck of a lot of people approaching me about the podcast. So it sometimes has to get a little bit more selective, but it's just as you say, you want to connect with people who are like-minded, share your values. And I think the fact that you're doing that as a business, I guess, speaks volumes. Is probably why you've had a smile on your face for most of this podcast, particularly when you're talking about what you do.
Thanks.
And look, I guess with that in mind, what are the plans for you moving forward, Jeff? You know, Brilliance Within, clearly when you started it, it was yourself, it was a hobby, very much a lifestyle business. What does the future look like for you in terms of staff numbers, offices, virtual, remote, whatever it may be?
So I consider this business will remain a lifestyle business. I mentioned my daughter is 14 and 10. My wife is a very busy high school math teacher. I love being home in the morning to get my daughters off to school. I love to make sure the house is clean, so when my wife comes home, she doesn't have to worry about it. So I fully expect this to be a small boutique company for the foreseeable future. Now, come a number of years from now, that my view on that may change. And so we're a flexible team. So we have consultants and other coaches, and we have back office support, but we flex and we shrink as the business needs dictate. And I really don't expect that to change. I love being the main service provider of the business.
I like that. It just says a lot about yourself, Jeff. You know who you are. You know what you like. You're not kind of apologetic about the fact that you're planning to take over the world with a huge coaching business or anything like that. And that's why when you and I first connected, I was like, look, perfect. You know, I don't want to be the biggest recruitment company out there. I just want to have kind of a reasonable sized business, but doing things right with people, as I say, people I like, people that I can, you know, could perhaps go for a beer with. And I heard that you dropped the fact that your wife is a high school teacher. And in terms of connection, I know that Adam, his wife, is also a teacher. Adam, have you cleaned the house today, though?
Oh, gosh, I've unloaded the dishwasher. I've loaded it again. What can I say? It's kind of the life of working from home, isn't it? You know, there's me in the bottom of my garden in my garden office, and I know what it feels like to live and be married to a teacher. They're always on, aren't they? You know, they're more on than probably you and I are, Jeff, in the fact that my wife is always planning and thinking about her next lesson. She's always looking for an opportunity for a lesson, pull something in from the news feeds that are coming through all the time that she can bring into her lessons. And she's a geography teacher.
Yeah, totally agree. Yeah. I don't hold a candle to what my wife does. She's amazing.
Excellent stuff. Well, look, Jeff, it's been great speaking to you so far. But look, before we wrap up the show, and just as they do on the High Performance podcast, I know that Adam and I are both a fan of, we always end up with a quick fire question round. So look, I'll kick us off with that. And then look, you are a coach, but if you were to coach your younger self, what would be the one piece of advice that you would give to your younger self?
Don't be afraid.
I like it.
What a nugget. What a nugget. Are there any specific books or resources that you use that you could recommend to our listeners?
I love stories um, of, as a man, of masculine initiation and going through the gauntlet. So anytime I have an opportunity to read those books, because I'm in the process of becoming, that's the word I use for that. And so a couple books that folks might be interested in, if you're interested in that topic, is called Tender Bar. Recently was released as a movie on Amazon Prime as well. And I'm reading right now Andre Agassi's book called Open. And that's both are true stories. One's a memoir and one's an autobiography. So those are two books that are on my table right now.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing.
Stuff. And look, I guess you said that you're flexible in terms of depending on the how business is going and the demands at any particular time. But look, rather than for your own business, what would you say are the top 3 qualities that the business leaders that you're dealing with should be valuing most when building their teams? And do they align with yours as well, to chuck that in there?
Top 3 characteristics for growing their business. Empathy. I mentioned that. Well, I'll use words. So empathy and courage. Those are definitely, I would say, in the top 2. And what would be my third? Trust.
Okay. Cool.
Empathy, courage, and trust. Those would be the 3 characteristics. And we could do a whole podcast just on those 3 words.
We definitely could. We definitely could. You've talked about your family. You've talked about your wife extensively, and she sounds like an amazing woman as well. But dare I ask, is there anything outside that you enjoy doing outside of work, apart from spending time with your lovely family?
Besides spending time with my family, I was just going to talk about my 8th grade daughter. She's a basketball player 12 months out of the year. I love driving her to tournaments and games, just letting her control the radio and those brief little talks. I love getting together over coffee with those like-minded people that have zero to do with business.
Yeah.
To go to the Starbucks or the Panera or the diner. We have lots of diners here in New Jersey. So yeah, I love to just to have lunch, love to go out to eat, and just spend time over a meal or a good hot beverage with somebody.
I like it. And look, you are a coach, you are a CEO yourself, but you're also helping life science CEOs to create high-performing teams. But look, to end the show, what would you list as your number 1 golden rule for both life and business in terms of creating that balance?
It's not about me.
Short and sweet.
That's one of my core values that I got from that mentor that I mentioned before, Dominic. It's not about me. I would say that's the number 1.
It's amazing. It's amazing that you make that point, because I often say to my kids, my teenage kids, don't make the story about you. It's about the story and having a story, but don't make the story about you. And that's the same sort of principle that you're describing, isn't it, Jeff? I think.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that.
Excellent. Well, look, Jeff, it's been an absolute pleasure hearing about your story of personal and professional growth here. Look, for anyone that wants to reach out to yourself, I know we've talked about connections. Is LinkedIn the best place to get you? Your website? Just give our audience a quick overview of where we can dial in, or how do we get hold of you?
Yeah, thanks. So brilliancewithincoaching.com is a great place for you to learn about what we do. And then LinkedIn is just a close second. My handle on LinkedIn is Brilliant Coach. I'm sure we can, you'll put this all in the show notes, but so those are 2 great places to find more about me, my story, and for us to connect.
Fantastic stuff. Well, look, Jeff, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on the show. As I said, thank you very much for being a part of the Huxley Morton podcast.
Thank you, guys.